Good evening, folks, and welcome to the Horror Corner. I'm your host, Sean Patrick Erschen, and this week we are taking a look back at a beloved classic, and that is The Hills Have Eyes. From 1977, directed by Wes Craven and starring Michael Berryman and the great Dee Wallace, who I have to say must be next in line from Jamie Lee Curtis as Scream Queen of all time, given she was in The Hills Have Eyes, The Howling, Cujo, the Halloween remake there from Rob Zombie, and of course E.T. But I am embarrassed to say that I have never seen this movie until a couple weeks ago. Shame on you, bad horror host. I can't believe I haven't seen it, because after seeing it, I was completely blown away, because this movie is awesome, folks. It's so realistic, it's so terrifying, it's so rough and raw. It reminds me of the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and it reminds me a little bit of Wes Craven's first movie, Last House on the Left, that real raw, gritty, brutally violent movie. But it's just great. I can't believe I've never seen it before. But it starts with this young, naive, suburban family. They decide one day they're going to go off on a road trip. And they end up in the middle of the desert when they're supposed to be going to California. And they find this little hole-in-the-wall gas station, and you get the old man who's like, trying to warn them, kind of, what are you guys doing around here? You're way off the beaten path if you're trying to get to California. And he yells off, and when they're driving away, stay on the main road. And he's like, trust me, you don't want to meet any of the locals. Nobody you would want to meet. And they find that out the hard way, unfortunately, when they drive off on their own and they take the wrong road. And the father ends up driving off the road, going out of control, smashing the car into a tree because these big planes fly over. They're like from the Air Force or whatever, and they do testing. And they fly so low, and the plane's like really loud. It's like shaking the car, and that's what caused them to go out of control. So the old man decides, he goes off on his own to try and go find the old man at the gas station, trying to get him down there and fix the car so they can drive off on their merry way. Of course, it doesn't quite work out that way. So in the family, you got Dee Wallace, who is a young mother, probably in her 20s, and her husband, and then they have a baby together. And also you got her brother, the young blonde dude, handsome, he's strapping the gun. And you got his sister, who's about maybe 17, 18, a real pretty young blonde girl. And then you got the grandparents. You got the old man who's like a ex-cop, and the mother is kind of just a socialite. Maybe seems like she might be rich and pretty well off, but she doesn't know what the hell's going on. So she's really freaking out. And but the old man goes off on his own, and meanwhile the family is led to their own devices. They got a camper, so they hang out in the camper and waiting for the father to come back. And meanwhile, Dee Wallace and her boyfriend are messing around, screwing around in the little station wagon there, getting it on. And so they pretty much think nothing's wrong, except for the young brother, who kind of does think there's something wrong. He starts hearing stuff as it gets later on. It starts to get dark out. He's hearing things rustling around in the desert. And so he's like, what the hell's going on? And so he sends the dogs off to kind of, and they hear something too, and their dogs start freaking out. And but the rest of the family doesn't quite believe him. They just shrug him off. Oh, you crazy. But he knows there's something wrong, and sure enough, he's right. There's this family of savages out to prey on people just like them, people that taken a wrong turn. that's what they do. They've done this before, and you can tell because they're really smart about it. They're cold and calculating, and you know, they know what they're doing. They know the desert, they know the rules of the road. They're like road warriors, kind of. And they're also probably cannibals. You see them with the bone necklaces and shit. And they, you know, they at one point they cook up a dog and put him on the rotisserie thing. You know, one guy eats a bird right out of the bird cage, and the young girl with the family eats the dog. You know, they cook them up. That's nasty. And you know, it's alluded to that they might be cannibals, but it's kind of subtle. They don't come right out with that. But much like the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre, you assume that family is cannibals, but it's never like that blatant. But when they finally catch up with the family, they break into their motorhome trailer and start rummaging through their stuff, stealing their food, and terrorizing the family. And they find the young girl in her bedroom, the young teenage blonde girl, and they harass her, and they actually rape her, you know. This guy, Michael, played by Michael Berryman, who's in so many horror movies, because he's like really crazy looking guy, you know. And it works perfectly. So he plays one of the savages, and he rapes the young girl. And the other savage dude has got these freaking razor sharp teeth. Like every tooth in his mouth is like a vampire tooth. He looks like a freaking mutant. He pulls the guy off and says, "You ain't a man yet. You can't do that yet." So he rapes her. It's crazy. But yeah, they terrorize the whole family, and they actually kidnap the baby, Dee Wallace's baby, and she catches them, and she fights for her life because can you imagine how horrifying that would be, how terrifying that could be? It's like the worst thing that could possibly happen to someone. And she fights for her life, does everything she can to try and stop them, but unfortunately they get away with the baby. The baby is in the hands of these brutal, savage, psychotic maniacs, led by the father, who's this big burly dude, and you see his nose. He looks like his nose got cut in half with a knife or something. It's so gross to look at. But the head of the family catches up with the old man, the grandfather, and kidnaps him, and he tortures him in the middle of the desert late at night. He puts a dead rat or something in the dude's mouth to keep his mouth shut. And then he crucifies him on the wood. And he's just there, and then he burns him, lights him on fire. So the dude's blowing up, lit on fire, and when the family catches up with him, he's like burnt to a crisp. He's trying to talk, and smoke coming out of his mouth. That's crazy. But yeah, they really brutalize and terrorize his family. But at one point, the tide starts to turn a little bit. They decide, you know what, we're going to fight back. And they do. They really start fighting back because they're tired of being terrorized. They have to get that baby back. And they have to do everything in their power to fight off these crazy family cannibals. And they do. They start setting up booby traps and fighting them at their own game. And it works, you know, it works for their advantage. But what a thrilling movie, folks. It's so realistic, it's so raw, it's so nasty and sick and scary. I love it. I absolutely love it. And I cannot believe I never saw it before. And what an amazing release this is by Arrow. This is my first Arrow Blu-ray, but man, what a collection. Look at this. On the inside, you get these promo cards. They're really cool. And look at that. You get the original cover on the other side. You get these cool, like, promo cards from the movie. Check that out. Awesome. Really cool stuff. Look at that. And you also get this awesome poster, which is like 2 sides. Look at that. That's sick. That's awesome. Look at that. What an awesome release. And here you have this beautiful box, and you also have an awesome book with all kinds of great photos in here from the making of the movie, and stills from the movie, and talks all about the making of it. It's awesome. What a great collection. Thank you for joining me, folks, at the Horror Corner. Tune in and stay scared.